It's the Arch Advocate Show. A $4 billion shellacking Nike takes over the Colin Kaepernick debacle. Now listen, as I predicted yesterday, you know, if you went short on a position on Nike, I thought you could do quite well for yourself. For those of you that took that advice, congratulations on all that new money. And if you want to send a tip, right, for my my obvious prophetic vision into the future, which I gave yesterday, that Nike would be taking a shellacking, you know, if you want to kick down a couple of shekels, you can do that at archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com. You can become a monthly Patreon supporter. You can send some dough, just, you know, through PayPal or whatever. If you just want to do a one-time thing, hey, man, it's up to you, man. I'm not here. I'm not a pressure salesman, man. You do what you want to do, man. Buy what you want to buy. You want to go buy some Nikes? That's real stupid. But, you know, you do you, man. Everybody's got to do their own thing. So listen, going forward, I wanted to talk. I generally don't like to let shows bleed over into the next day, but there were some comments and some emails and whatnot that were sent to me yesterday. And let's talk about this really quick. One perspective I got from Fat Sacks was, you know, this is probably, you know, the thing about Nike is that, you know, the United States only represents, you know, a portion of their market share, and they're, you know, wildly popular in Europe and Eastern Europe and China and that sort of thing. That's all true. It's all true, right? So the sales numbers, when they come in, right, because we're just about to finish up, you know, the third quarter of the year, right? And the fourth quarter will end right after December, and then in sometime about mid-January, the reports will come out about Christmas time spending, right? And so the argument is, well, you know, China, Europe, whatever, maybe they don't particularly care for the U.S., but they still like Nike. Maybe, right? That's a very strong maybe. It kind of appears that there's a lot of, you know, nations out there that as a whole, they believe that Donald Trump sucks and the United States sucks and whatever, right? You know, that is a working theory. But keep in mind, the only reason that you believe that is because you're only being shown one side of the news. There are a lot of nations out there, like Poland, for example, that is making a hard stand against this globalism that's going on in America. And they're refusing to take in people into their country that hate them and want to kill them and rape their women and throw acid in people's faces, right? Those people are very much fans of what's going on in the United States right now, right? These people who are very, very Catholic have very big problems with the current Pope. You know what I mean? These are people who are independent thinkers. They don't just turn on the news and say, okay, well, I guess that's what I believe now, since the news told me that must be the way of it, right? So let's take a look. Again, what this show is about is like, let's just decipher the times. These are really bizarre times. And, you know, there are some things that need to come into the light, right? Did you ever see Constantine with Keanu Reeves? Remember that? He had those tattoos on his arms. He's like, come into the light, I commend thee. You know, remember that? If you saw that movie, great movie, by the way. I loved it. You know what? There's a lot of people that didn't like Constantine. I don't get it. It's like, dude, that was a good movie, right? And then there's other movies like, what was it, that Leonardo DiCaprio movie? Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio is obviously one of the greatest living actors there is right now. But he was in that movie, you know, where they kept having a dream and kept going into different levels of the dream. I don't remember what the movie was, but it was a stupid movie. And people were like, oh, you just don't get it. It's like, no, I get it. I understood what was going on during the movie. It was dumb. It was a bad movie. Leonardo DiCaprio is a great actor. Here's another one. Flight with Denzel Washington. Obviously, Denzel Washington is like, you know, again, one of the greatest living actors, right? Every time he's in something, he's great. He's a great actor. But that movie, Flight, was stupid. Flying a plane upside down. It was dumb. He was great, but it was dumb. Anyways, I digress. Constantine, great movie. Anyways, come into the light, right? That's the thing, is that the forces of darkness, they don't like the light, right? But more and more they have forced themselves into the light. Right? Let me give you, so keeping in mind that everything I'm about to say is in the context of Nike's decision to use Colin Kaepernick for their 30th anniversary of the Just Do It advertising slogan campaign. Right? Everything I'm about to say, because it's all, everything ties into everything. Everything is representative of everything else. You know what I mean? Look, if you're going to take this guy who has millions of dollars and, was the starting quarterback, his first year, he had a pretty good year, right? He had the love of everybody in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. That is a huge, believe it or not, that's a huge football town. That's where Joe Montana made his bones. Jerry Rice. You know what I mean? Like that, the California run and shoot offense, that was, that started in San Francisco. It started in Candlestick Park. You know what I mean? That's a football town. And so when they get a new guy in, like Colin Kaepernick, and he has a really good first year, it's like, the people come alive in that town. So he had millions of dollars and the love of everybody. Got to be on TV, got to be famous. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to take this guy who wears pictures of, pigs on his socks dressed as policemen to say, the police officers are pigs. You're going to virtue signal as Nike with this guy, right? Now, keep in mind, Nike, multi-billion-dollar company. Those are not dummies that work there, right? How could you make such a bad decision? Like, Nike, you're already on the, here's a funny perspective. Liberals used to view Nike, prior to 2 weeks ago, liberals would look at Nike and say, Nike sweatshops abroad they're unjust, they're oppressive, and exploit labor in the name of greed. That's what the left said about Nike 2 weeks ago, or 1 week ago, right? Before it was announced that, Colin Kaepernick was their guy. Nike, to leftists, Nike was sweatshops, unjust, oppressive, exploitative, whatever, labor, in the name of greed. That's what the left says. This week, what does the left say about Nike? So much social justice from Nike. They're so brave. You see what I'm saying? Now listen, I wanted to, let me start off here. I know I've already started the podcast, but I kind of wanted to start off here with a quote from Zig Ziglar. If you're not familiar with Zig Ziglar, like, go buy his books and read. He's a motivational speaker, but he's like the original. You know what I mean? Like, before there was Tony Robbins, it was Zig Ziglar. He's still alive, by the way. He's an old guy. But just a good dude. He's from Mississippi. He grew up super poor. He joined the Marine Corps when he was young. But he tells this story. It's kind of a joke. He says, people, they tell me that, I don't want to go to church because church is just full of hypocrites. And he says, well, that's all right. We always have room for one more, right? And the joke is, obviously, everybody's a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite. I'm a hypocrite. Everybody is going, because what is hypocrisy? You know what I mean? Well, you think, normally what people say hypocrisy is when you say one thing and do another. But that's not actually hypocrisy, right? Or some people would say that flip-flopping on an idea. Like if if you change your mind on gun control or abortion or, whatever, the death penalty, just name a hot button topic. And it's like, if you change your mind on that, people would say, well, that's hypocritical. Well, no, it's not. You're free to change your mind all you want, right? What does hypocrisy actually mean? Well, it actually comes from a guy's name, Hippocrates, right? Who was an actual guy. And he was a thespian, right? He was an actor. He sat in front of the camera. Just kidding, he lived a long time ago before cameras. But hypocrisy, what it actually means is that when you pretend to be something that you know that you are not, it means to be an actor. right? That's literally what it is. That's who Hippocrates was. He was an actor. And so when people say, well, that's hypocritical, you're a hypocrite. What that, in its truest definition, it just means that, like Hillary Clinton was against gay marriage, right? Right up until the point to when the polls told her that if she came out in support of gay marriage, that people would like her more. So she started pretending that she was a fan of gay marriage. She probably didn't have an opinion either way ever, because I think that she's an immoral, amoral. She's just a voice. I don't think she's even a human being. You know what I mean? But that's not the point. The point is that what she did was she acted as if this thing. That's hypocrisy. When she had that reporter say, oh, name something that you carry in your purse that nobody knows about. Hot sauce. It's like you're trying to appeal to black people. Like, you're acting. That's hypocrisy, right? So, you and I, like me, I've said this before, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, not a very good one. You know what I mean? I cuss sometimes. I have a couple too many drinks. I smoke cigarettes. You know what I mean? Like, that's not hypocritical. I know that I should not be doing those things. I don't go around telling other people, like, well, you shouldn't do this, but I should. You know what I mean? I don't act like, if you see me in public, I'm not going to change the way I speak, the way I drink, the way I smoke. You know what I mean? That would be hypocritical of me to do that. I don't do that. Right? So I just wanted to take a second to define what hypocrisy actually is. It's not what you think. It's not flip-flopping. It's not saying one thing and doing another. It's when you put on a face, like actors. They put on makeup, they put on costumes, they read the scripts, that they themselves did not write. They pretend to be something that they're not. There's a place for it. If like you're an actor, then you're literally a hypocrite. And that's fine as long as we're all in on the joke. You know what I mean? As long as we all understand. That's what it is. But when you start acting and nobody knows that you're acting, nobody knows that you're being a phony, nobody knows that you're pretending to be something that you're not, then it's that word hypocrisy becomes an insult, becomes used in the pejorative. So when Nike uses slave labor in Vietnam or whatever to make their shoes, right? Nike is an American company. Why are they not making their shoes in the United States? Why aren't they hiring all these poor Mexican people that are just trying to get a better life? Why aren't they down? Why don't they have their shoe assembly plants in New Mexico, Arizona, and Southern California, and Texas? Why? Well, because it would cost them more money, even if they were using labor from illegal. You know what I mean? Like they could put the plant in Mexico. They could make their Nike shoe assembly plant. They could put it just across the border in Mexico, but they won't do that because Mexican labor would still cost more than the labor that they're getting in Vietnam. These are not virtuous people. Now, listen, I don't want to get off into the subject of, well, is it really that bad? Is it bad that Apple, who created this laptop that I'm right now recording this episode on, they made my wife's iPhone? You know what I mean? Like, is it okay for them to use slave labor? It's like, well, I mean, boy, we could really get into that discussion. You could even say, well, like Pete, since you bought, a Macintosh laptop, an Apple laptop, doesn't that make you supportive of slave labor? It's like, boy, we could get into that. You know what I mean? Like, if you leveled that accusation against me, we'd have a hell of an argument, for sure, right? But that's not the point. That's not what I want to get at. That's not what I want you to think about, right? I want you to think about who Nike is, like what they're doing. It's like, you don't get to stand up and say that you are virtuous, because clearly you are not. You're in it for the money, right? Which by itself, I don't have a problem with that. You know what I mean? If you're employing people in Southeast Asia who would not otherwise have a job, right? Like if Nike was not in Southeast Asia, would those people be employed anywhere? You know what I mean? Like that's a good thing, I suppose, but it's like you're not being virtuous. Virtuousness would be you coming back to the United States with your shoe production company and producing your shoes so that American people can have jobs. Right? That would be virtuous. You know what I mean? That would be virtuous. But you're not. You're using slave labor. You're using slave labor and you're doing it in the name of profit and whatever, which is, you know, by itself, it's like if you just want to be real quiet and go over there and do your thing, you go do that. But don't come on my television, don't come on my Facebook and Twitter, start telling me that you're virtuous. We're so virtuous, we're going to get this Colin Kaepernick guy, this guy who hates America for some reason. America has been way better to Colin Kaepernick than a lot of other Americans. You know what I mean? And this guy hates it. He hates the fact that he's rich and famous and beloved. He hates it so much that he's going to make this blanket statement that cops are just out there slaying black people without offering any facts. Right? There are actually people out there who can make a compelling, yet wrong, but compelling argument that, you know, black people are being unjustly slaughtered by the police. There's people who can make that argument. They can make valid arguments that can then be disproven, but the arguments themselves are, you know, there's numbers involved, there's statistics or whatever. Like you can spin those things to make it look a certain way. It's like, okay, fine, you bring that argument to me and I will have that argument with you. But Colin Kaepernick doesn't even make the argument. He doesn't make the argument. He has never once gone on TV and said, well, listen, I'm looking at these facts. Here's the facts. Here's the numbers. Here's, you know, what I'm looking at here. He's never done that. He's just making blanket statements that cops are pigs and they're evil and they're slaying black people. And I hate America for it, is what he says. Right? So for Nike to come out and pretend that they are virtuous and that, you know, Colin Kaepernick is making these huge sacrifices, and that's what Nike's all about, man. We're about making sacrifices, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you lose everything. Make that sacrifice. It's like, dude, that Nike, you're pretending, you're acting, and that is hypocrisy. So we see the left now. It's like coming into the light. And you think, here's the thing. Here's where I'm putting my money down on. This is what I bet. I bet that people on the left, right? Let's just say that America's political climate is split right down the middle. It's just 50-50. There's 50% on the left and 50% on the right. There's nobody on the right that's going to look at what's going on with Nike right now and say, you know what? I was wrong. I think I'm going to become more to the left. I think I'm going to go down and re-register myself to vote as a Democrat, and that's how I'm going to vote in November of this year. Nobody on the right's going to do that. Right? So what is it that you're trying to gain? Because you can't have those people. The only thing, the only byproduct that this can do for you is push people away. Right? The only outcome that's possible here, as far as, you know, political sway goes, is you're going to push people away from you because they're going to look at this, even liberals, right? Because there's a lot of people on the left that are still more in that sort of classic liberal, you know, a classic liberal is somebody who just wants to be left alone, right? That's what liberal used to mean. That's what I used to be. People used to call me a liberal because I was the guy that was just like, look, if you want to smoke weed and, you know, bugger some dude in the butthole in your own house, you know what I mean? Like, if you want to, you know, if that's what you're into, you do you. Just don't bring it outside of your house. Don't let me see it, right? And I'm going to do whatever I do in my house, and you have to leave me alone, and that's the agreement. That's what a liberal used to be. Just leave me alone, and I'll leave you alone, and we'll all, we'll meet up in the middle and we'll all have a barbecue and whatever. We'll all be friends. But when we go into our each in our house, if I want to smoke a joint, right? If I want to, I don't know, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like it's that's what liberal used to be. There's a lot of liberals now that are still like consider themselves left, and they're still registered to vote Democrat and whatever. There's a lot of those people that are looking at what's happening with Nike right now, and they're thinking, that's hypocritical, and I don't want to be associated with that. They don't care about, they don't wear Nikes. They don't play basketball. They play tennis. They run, they're into running. Their kids play soccer, whatever. Like, they don't give a damn about Nike, but what they do see is like the hypocrisy. They see it. And they don't want to be associated with that because nobody does. Nobody does. Nobody wants to feel in their heart like, oh, I am associated with hypocrisy. Right? Like I've made this, you talk about Joel Osteen, right? And the big church he has there in Houston. There's tens of thousands of people go to that church every week. Right? Joel Osteen is a hypocrite. He's an actor. He's up there performing an art of acting like he's some man of God, and a lot of people believe that. He's a hypocrite. But all those people, like if you talk to all those people, there's not a single person in that congregation that's thinking to themselves like, man, I'm associated with a hypocrite. Because if they did, they would leave. You know what I mean? Like if they saw it the way that I saw it, right? If they had my mind, they would leave because nobody wants to feel that way. Right, so what else do we have? Like, what else is this thing with Nike? What is it indicative of? Because I don't wear Nikes. I don't have you know what I mean? I don't have a dog in this fight. I've never liked Nikes because they don't feel right on my feet. I've always liked Asics. I'm an Asics guy. I don't give a crap about Nike. What I'm trying to expose here is, like, what else does this mean? What is this indicative of? What is this thing that we're seeing? What does it indicate for us? It's like, well, let's put it on the table and let's see what else that we can put on this table that looks similar. Right? The left used to say, listen, like take abortion, for example. Right? Roe versus Wade was in January of 1973, just, 3.5, 4 months before I was born, right? Roe versus Wade came along, and what was it that the leftists, the pro-abortion people, I used to actually say is, I don't believe that there's anybody who's out there who's like pro-abortion. I don't believe that there's leftists out there that are like, yay, abortion, this is great. I used to say that recently. It used to be that people on the left, they would say, look, we gotta have abortions. We have to have this as it remaining in the domain of women's rights. And why? Because of rape and incest. That's what they would always say. They would always say that. We have to have this in the domain of women's rights because sometimes women get raped. And sometimes little girls get raped by their parents and they get pregnant that way. And parents extending out to like uncles and grandfathers and weirdos like that. So the left would always say, man, this is about these people, this very small demographic of people. We need to make sure that they always have the legal right to terminate their pregnancy. That's what they always said. And people like me, right? People on the right, even Christian people, they would say, okay, I understand that argument. That's a very powerful argument, right? Because, you can't identify with somebody's pain that's in that position. If a woman got raped, it's like, dude, if you're me, right? I'm a man. Like, I can't imagine what that would be like. And so people like me would be like, okay, all right, that's a hell of an argument. But the argument from our side was always like, Yeah, but you're killing babies. And you're getting dangerously close to Moloch worship. You're literally killing babies. And not only that, but all of your abortion clinics, over 75% of them are in black neighborhoods. And in places like, what was it, Chicago? I was just reading a thing yesterday or the day before. Maybe it was New York City or Chicago or someplace, but it was in the black community, more black babies were aborted than were born. Now that's eugenics. That is an extermination on black people. And so people like me would be like, yeah, I hear your rape and incest argument, but you look like you're trying to exterminate black people and poor people, right? And so that argument went back and forth for 45 years until just recently. They've come into the light. They have been pushed into the light. Because now what is the left doing? They are literally celebrating abortion. They are using it as bragging rights and encouraging other young women to brag and boast about their abortions. Right? Because if it was a medical thing, if it was a human rights medical thing, a woman's right to access a medical procedure, having sovereignty over her own body, it would be the same as like if I told you, like, dude, I just got my appendix removed. You know what I mean? Yay, appendix removal. Like if I started bragging about that, you'd be like, well, that's dumb. Why are you bragging about that? Nobody gives a crap. And I just had my tonsils removed. You know what I mean? Oh, I just had a wart removed off of my butthole. You know what I mean? Like, that's not something to brag about. Why are you bragging about this thing, this medical procedure that you said it was a medical procedure? Why do you feel the need to brag about it? Why are you on TV saying God bless abortion and then losing your show? They've come into the light. It was never about the rape victim and the incest victim, who, by the way, is less than 1% of all the people who even get abortions. It was never about that. It was about something dark and sinister, and now these people have been pushed into the light, and we can see who they are now. We can see what the argument was truly about this entire time. It was always about the extermination of innocent babies, and they're laughing about it. They're bragging about it. They're encouraging the youth to practice it. That's what it was always about. Hypocrisy and being thrust into the light. Things that are kept in darkness being thrust into the light. Now we can see it. So now we have Nike, right? And Colin Kaepernick being thrust into the light. It's like, dude, you don't even have an argument. You've never once made your argument. All you've said is that you hate cops and you hate America. Same thing with abortion. It was never about a woman's sovereignty to, have complete control over her own medical necessities. You know what I mean? It was never about that. It was always about killing babies. What else can we see? Right? What can we see in politics that is similar to those things where people are being thrust into the light? We've seen, the reason I keep repeating this same concept is because I'm trying to find the right combinations of words to articulate it. We have seen over the last few decades, well, at least, John Kennedy, who I could make a lot of arguments against, he had this one speech where he said, listen, there is an evil cabal of people that are trying to overthrow America, and I'm going to bring them into the light. And shortly thereafter, he was assassinated. Right? That's spooky. And I've made this point several times that, Barack Obama, George Bush, Bill Clinton, George Bush Sr., They were all working together. They were never, the Democrats and the Republicans, they were never outside of the same bed. They've always been working together. And they've been working together to bring about this globalist agenda where they get to be on top and they get to be rich and everybody in the world gets to be equally poor and equally violent. Maybe because, you know, in their weird religion that they believe there's too many people on the earth and there needs to be a big war so that enough people will just slaughter enough other people and that'll reduce the population. Who knows? Who knows what these globalists think? But we can see now they've been thrust into the light. There is a sitting U.S. president who got there because he won the Electoral College. That's how our system works. He got there fair and square. And even the Republicans have been trying to take him down. Right? There is a reason why Donald J. Trump has not been assassinated. And I've got that reason narrowed down to two things, right? It's either because the enemies of the United States, George Bush, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, these people, it's either because they know that it would be way too high of a profile and that if that happened, there would be enough people like me that would storm on Washington and grab enough of these politicians by their neck and drag them out into the streets and execute them. That there would be enough of that it would be out of control. It's either that or it's because people like me are praying for that man and praying for his protection. Right? I pray for the protection of Donald J. Trump. You know what I mean? Because it's like, man, that guy's pissing a lot of people off. All the kind of people he has pissed off the former head of the CIA, right? Who the CIA is quite possibly responsible for the assassination of JFK. There's plenty of assassinations that the CIA is responsible for that we already know about. The CIA is not above killing people, innocent people, right? And the head of the CIA was John Brennan. He hates Trump. And he has connections into the CIA. He is pissed off the head of the FBI, right? What's his name? James Comey. And Peter Strzok and all those other people. But James Comey, he was the head of the FBI. He has pissed off all the people that you don't want to have pissed off at you. President Donald J. Trump's life is in constant danger. And that's why I pray for him. I pray for protection from Almighty God over that man. Because, so, it's only one of those two things is, you know, the prayers of the faithful, or the fact that the bad guys know that, like, oh boy, if they did that, they, like Hillary said, we would hang them from nooses. Hillary Clinton was right. Hillary Clinton, when we find out what you did, you will hang from a noose. And I, for one, will do everything in my power to be in that courtyard when that happens. Right? Coming into the light is what we're seeing. And it's not just on topics like Nike, which is, again, I don't have a dog in that fight. I don't have any skin in that game, or whatever euphemism or metaphor you want to use. I don't care about Nike. Never have. Their shoes are cool looking, but I never wore them. I don't care. It's the principle. It's the coming into the light that we can see in that. And now we can see, it's like you want to form your opinion on abortion. Well, there's only two camps. There's only two camps. You're either for it or you're against it. Okay? Now look at the people who are for it. What do they say? They say, God bless abortion on Netflix. They put up billboards that say, celebrate your abortions. Shout out your abortions. Sorry. Shout out your abortion. Who are you going to be? Which side are you going to take? You want to be for or against abortions? Because if you're for it, you have to go over to those people, and they are dark. Not dark skinned. They're dark. They live in darkness. Sorry if that was racist for you. Politics. we're seeing these people being shoved into the light, and we can see them, and you're going to have to choose who you're going to be. Right? You remember in the 80s and 90s, it was like, oh, we got to get prayer out of school, man. Separation of church and state, man. Can't have prayer in schools. It's like, I was always on the wrong side of that argument. I would always tell my Christian friends, like, why is it that you've not taught your children how to pray constantly? Why is it that your children only know how to pray out loud in groups of other Christians? The Apostle Paul said, pray without ceasing. Or was it Timothy? It doesn't matter. But, why is it that these kids can't pray with their mouths closed? That used to be the argument that I made. But the left was always saying, like, oh, it's separation of church and state, man. Can't have religious people here. And then what happened? All of a sudden, it's not okay for Christians to pray in school, but you have to let Muslims have pray 5 times a day. So what is that? 3 breaks during a school, class, school day. Well, you have to let Muslims pray, man, or else that's Islamophobia. Man, we can't be judging these people because they have a different religion than us. It's like, well, wait a minute. You just said no praying in school. See what I'm saying? Come into the light. The darkness is being thrust into the light. Right? Do you see it? Like, do you see how it's happening in every aspect? Gay marriage, I've made this point before. What was the gay marriage argument over about? It's like, well, we just want to be equal to you in our rights. When you're married and, your spouse is dying in a hospital, you have the right to be there next to them as they breathe their final breaths. And gay people were saying, I can't do that. Even though, like in the case of George Takei, him and his boyfriend have been together for a long time. They would always use that. Like, well, look at these people. They've been together for 40 years or whatever. And they can't be in the same room as one of them dies. That was their argument. And, if George Takei, formerly of Star Trek fame, if he dies, he cannot leave his estate to his longtime boyfriend. That was their argument. And they used that argument because it was reasonable. Because you could bring that to somebody like me and be like, yeah, that's weird. Why can't George Takei's boyfriend be in the same room with him as he dies? That seems weird. I'm not for gay people, but it's like that rule, that's kind of a dumb rule. And why is it that George Takei cannot just give his estate to his boyfriend? That's his money, brother. He can do whatever the hell he wants with it, but not in this case. Why? Well, because he's not married. It's like, well, that is kind of a compelling argument. But we would always tell them, like, no, we can give you the right to be in the same hospital room. We can give you the same rights of insurance, right? We can change the insurance laws to accommodate you. We can change the medical laws to accommodate you, right? But we don't want to give you the same equal standing as us when it comes to marriage, because to us, this is an agreement between us and God. And our God says, if you are a homosexual, you will not reproduce, and therefore when you die, you will die the ultimate death. You will die the death that means you will no longer be in the earth. If your genetic material is not passed on, then when you die, your bloodline that took millions of years to get here, or 7,000, ends. It ends with you. So no, you're not on the same playing field as us. You're not on the same playing field as us. You don't have the same stake. When you look, like if you adopt a child, it's not the same thing as having created that child. It's not the same level of commitment. It's not the same spiritual journey. And we don't want you to have the same rights as us, because in our community, my authority as a husband and as a father, that carries weight when it comes to meeting with the school board. And when the school board says, hey, we want to teach sexual education in our class, I can go into that school board and say, no, I don't want strangers talking to my kid about sex. Or if the school board says we want to implement religious teaching or we want to extract religious teaching, as a parent, I can go in and say, no, I don't want you teaching my children about religion, or yes, I do want you teaching my children about religion. Either way, it's my call and my vote. It has sway. My voice has sway. We don't want gay people to have the same authority as we do because you don't have the same skin in the game. And we don't want you coming into our schools and teaching our children about your lifestyle, which we don't like. And as it is that you represent, what is it, less than 3% of the population, that you don't have the rights, you don't have the same rights as we do. And they said, what did they say? No. We're not going to come into your schools. We're not going to come and try to teach your children about human sexuality. We're not going to do that. We just want to be in the same hospital room when our boyfriend dies. We just want to be able to pass along our estate to our lover when we die, just like you. So we said, okay, just don't come after the kids. They said, no. We're not going to come after the kids. We said, all right. Go ahead and get married. What was the first thing they did? What was the first thing they did? They walked right down to the school. They were acting. Here's another funny one. I don't want to get way into, esoteric land, but the decriminalization and re-legalization of cannabis in the United States, right? Started off in Colorado. Well, the battle really began in California, but Colorado was the first to decriminalize and re-legalize, and then California followed suit, but doesn't matter. What was the big thing, right? The people that were pro re-legalization were all saying, like, listen, this has only been illegal since 1934. The reason it's illegal is BS to begin with. Cannabis used to be a staple in our economy. It used to be one of the most important components of the economy in the United States. We need to re-legalize it so that all these people don't go to prison over weed, and so that we can have this legal plant that we can make paper out of and ropes out of and oil, for paint, and we can use it for medicinal purposes, purposes and whatever, and it'll all be taxable just like tobacco, and we can all make a bunch of money. That's what they said. And what is the left doing now? They're bitching about how much taxes they have to pay in their newfound profits. It's like, dude, your concern was never about prisoners and the fact that we're using wood pulp to make paper. Your concern was always about profit. If you just would have let off with that, we would have been with you. But now you've been thrust into the light, and everybody can see that you're a hypocrite. People don't want to be associated with hypocrites. This is all going to end very badly for the left, because the more the left speaks, the more they expose themselves as hypocrites. Keith Ellison, right? He's running for Attorney General of Minnesota. He refused to be sworn in on a Bible and demanded that he be sworn in on a Quran. He has police records of beating up his girlfriends. His girlfriends called the cops and said, this dude just beat the crap out of me. Did you see Laura Loomer's thing? Like, running up on him and saying, hey, what about this? What is this? What is this police report? What does this say? How is it that you want to be the Attorney General of Minnesota? And you see him run away. He runs to his car and drives off at a meeting that he was supposed to speak at. He ran away. Because that's what happens when you are thrust into the light. If you're living in darkness and you're thrust into the light, that's your response to it. Those people, all these people, are allergic to it. Now you see, it's Linda Salsour, just yesterday or the day before. She gets on this Twitter rant, and she's telling all these people, you just need to vote Democrat. I don't care if you like these people or not, if you like their politics or not. It doesn't matter. You need to vote Democrat no matter what. It's like, whoa, really? So if a Democrat is out there and saying everything that you hate to hear, if you're a Democrat, Right? What if a Democrat gets up there and says, you know what, I'm actually pro-life. Tell you the truth, I don't think gay people should be married. Right? Tell you the truth, I think Colin Kaepernick sucks as a person and he was a crappy quarterback. What if a Democrat is out there saying that? And Linda Sauer-Sewer is now saying, it doesn't matter if you like him or not, you need to vote for him just because it's about the party, man. Thrust into the light. Thrust into the light. That's what's going on right now, and you can see it. And it is wonderful to behold. That's the show for today. Hey, if you want to support the show, go on to archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com. Become a monthly Patreon supporter. Hey, listen, hit subscribe if you have not already to this podcast. Hit subscribe. That's a huge help. Hit share and like and all that other stuff. And I will talk to you mañana.